Yes, hi. I just talked to Yves, and he said I should call in 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Hold on, please.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm trying to reach for Yves Komaclo. Yves works in Credit, an investor to microfinance institutions. He has worked with microfinance in 5 years and prior to that in development banking. There's still a lot of work to do, he says, but he believes that microfinance is an efficient tool to contribute to the development of Africa.
Hello? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So Credit, it's a socially responsible investor.
Yeah.
And as such, we are interested in investing at, I would say, at grassroots level. However, given our level of intervention, we generally have to go through financial intermediary to reach the disadvantaged people. Which means that the best way for us or the most effective way of financing or giving credit to poor people is to work through microfinance institutions.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
And so it's definitely because it's a strategic move from us that led us to invest in microfinance for over the past, 20 years now. Okay, so really, Credits is, you may have seen that in our documentation, we are the first private organization to invest in microfinance in terms of number of microfinance institutions covered worldwide. Okay, so why we have chosen to invest in microfinance is because it's really in line with our mission and our values.
Okay.
Okay.
And so you invest in microfinance institution all over the world, if I understand.
That's right. Yes.
And would you say that there are like particular difficulties related to countries or continents?
Obviously, yeah. Obviously, developing countries have all sorts of issues. Particularly if we talk about Africa, there's infrastructure, both physical and human, difficulties. There is difficult business environments, legal, political. So we can go into much detail, but obviously doing business in developing countries is it's a challenge when compared to OECD countries. So we are invested in Latin America, Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe, and obviously all those countries have their own particular issues.
There are different difficulties, but what would you say is the main difficulties with microfinance in Africa?
Okay.
Do you have any control system, or how does it work?
Right. Yeah. Obviously, we have our internal management systems, and we have also reporting requirements for those MFIs. But they themselves have their own internal management system, and they have to do close monitoring of their clients, because the microfinance is the sector that is dedicated to funding the informal sector. Basically, yeah. The informal sector is primarily financed by microfinance. So, by definition, players from the informal sectors do not have physical addresses, do not have assets that can be securitized. So these are the key difficulties that they have, that microfinance institutions have when they're trying to finance their clients, because there's very little collateral. It's quite difficult to identify those clients. So some of them do not even have a proper physical address. So a close monitoring is obviously very important, and that's also why the group lending has been a success, because with the group lending, every member it's a solidarity loan. So every member of the group is a guarantee for the others. So that's a way to walk around the difficulty of collateral, for the lack of collateral.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does like Oiko Credit make sure that they're working with reliable partners?
Yeah, well, obviously the first one is proper legal registration, both from an administrative point of view and from the Ministry of Finance point of view. So that's obviously the place to start. Second aspect is obviously they need to have a track record, and because I would say we are a wholesaler, we generally do projects or loans that are of a significant size. So we will not deal with the smallest MFIs, but we will deal with first and second tier MFIs. So they already have at least some practices, some recognition on the market, and so on.
Okay. But Oiko Credit itself doesn't have any contact with the clients?
We do. We have contacts, but not continuous contacts. Okay. We deal with clients when we do our due diligence. So we visit clients just to have a feedback from them on the way they perceive the microfinance institutions and their agents. We do talk to we do talk to clients when we do our regular monitoring visits. Mm-hmm. But our primary objective is to work first with the microfinance institution. Yeah. Hold on for me. Hold on.
Yes.
I have another call. Hold on. Allô? Je suis en ligne. Je te rappelle.
I asked Yves about women and microfinance. Why are we talking about microfinance directed to women? And does it really help? Are women better clients than men? And even more important, is microfinance helping them to become more independent and empowered?
Hello? Hello, I'm back.
Yes.
Hi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, like with the institution that you lend money to, do you work particularly with women's rights?
I don't know what that means, because first of all, most MFIs focus on women, not necessarily women's rights, but they focus on women. If you look at in our portfolio, we are, I think, 85% of our partners' clients are women.
I think I saw something.
So you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not that we're looking to improve women's rights, but we're just looking to empower women. It's as simple as that. So we don't have an advocacy role, if that is what your question is.
Yes.
We don't have a clear advocacy role, although we prefer to work with MFIs that have a focus on women, obviously.
Why would that be?
There are many reasons. First of all is just that banks have I would say that because of reliance on collateral, and in many countries in the world, women do not have access to land titles. If you look at, especially in Africa, inheritance. So if in terms of inheritance, it's the boys that inherit from the land, not the daughters. It's the sons that inherit from the land, not the daughters. Therefore, women are often precluded from having collateral to put into when seeking, and that blocks them from accessing bank loans. So obviously, microfinance will have, I would say, it's a ready-made market for microfinance, the women, and we also, from experience, I've noticed that repayment rates of women is better than repayment rates of men. And obviously, propensity to divert the funds away from their original intent is higher with men. So it's both from an analytical point of view and from how would you say from a practical point of view that it's better for microfinance to lend more to women than men.
So if I understand, would you say that microfinance directed to women have a better impact than if it's directed to men?
I saw that question. It's hard to answer that way because it depends on the criteria. See, if the criteria is giving access to finance, I would say there's no preference. If it means empowering the disadvantaged, I think it's the same. You see, that the way the question is framed, it will not be. It will lead us to the wrong conclusion. You see, I'm not sure how to say that. You don't have microfinance direct to women or directed to men. You only have microfinance. You see, I have never come across microfinance institutions that is directed to men only. That does not exist. You see, and better when the way you frame it, it means that better is from a moral point of view. So that's difficult to answer.
Okay.
Sorry. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So sustainable. You see, if you have behind that, I would say you will need to break it down into sub criteria such as sustainability, empowerment, outreach, those criteria, and then you can compare. And it's for me this one is a very difficult question.
Because is it like you're concerned that if you ask the question, would that microfinance directed to women have better impact? It means that microfinance to men don't have any impact.
Yeah. First, no, that's number one, and also it does not exist. There's no microfinance directed to men. That does not exist.
But if you say like, not saying microfinance directed to women or men, but just microfinance in general, and if you have the borrower is a man or a woman, where would you find the best impact, so to say, or best result?
That's okay. You see, it's not the microfinance is not a gender issue. It's and also the impact is impact on what? You see, if it's impact on the livelihoods of the household, or impact on the income, the ability to generate additional income. You see that those are ways to measure. Or is it going to be more sustainable over the long term or more profitable? You see, so you will have to qualify. I think this question needs more analysis. Yeah, but if you want to put me in a trap, I would say I would prefer to lend to women. but that doesn't mean much.
No, because that's what I'm trying to analyze, because almost everything I've read about microfinance is always that but it's better to give to women than to men. But there's actually nothing, like no study showing that it would be better.
Exactly.
Okay, which brings me to the next question. Like, there are studies showing that microfinance is ineffectual, that is like putting clients in debt and not targeting the poorest, if you would say like that. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I said I would return the question to the persons making the recommendation or the analysis. Why should microfinance target the poorest?
Okay.
Because if you lend, because it's very easy to lend to the poorest, and then the poorest will not be able to repay, and then people will get accused of lending to clients, putting people in debt. So obviously, microfinance is not a humanitarian activity. The poorest should be dealt with by aid and grants. Microfinance should be targeting people who have activities that generate income and want to increase their income.
Okay.
That's my personal view. I'm not. That's not EcoCredit speaking. That's my personal view. Okay. Yeah. So obviously, if microfinance is very effective of getting people out of poverty. That doesn't mean that they target the poorest, but they target the poor, the active poor. You see, and getting those active poor out of poverty, microfinance is very well positioned to do that. And actually, there's no other way. You will not get the banks, and you will not aid will not work. You need credit and the discipline of reimbursement. You see, that's how you get people out of poverty, and also that's how you make them bankable.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've seen those studies where they're not targeting the poorest, and I think I don't agree with that. I think microfinance shouldn't target the poorest because they can't afford to. They can't afford the lending system because they have to reimburse and they can't generate any money, so they can't reimburse. Microfinance should lend to to people or micro enterprises because they generate income and they can improve themselves by using the loans from the microfinance, the micro loans.
But for example, if you look at like microloans given to women, often it results in women opening so-called like maybe shops and like that, but they're in very small scale.
Yeah.
And some critics says that like you don't end poverty that way because then you would just end up having people opening micro shops, so to say.
Yeah.
Which cannot actually grow in business because they're like competing to each other all the time. So what microfinance or microloans actually does is just like maintaining people in the same situation.
Okay.
How do you see on that, critic?
The way I see it is it's a progress in their it's a life cycle. When you look before they had the shop, they had only like a store in the market. So accessing credit, accessing the microfinance, the microloan allows them to move into a shop. And then after a shop, maybe they will open a second shop for their daughter or for their relative. And they are moving into a proper, more established business. So it's a step. I'm not saying that they should stop at the level of a shop, but it's a very big step to move from a market stall into a shop. Then, obviously, once they get into a shop, they increase their working capital, they increase their revenues, then they can move into a bank who can then lend them higher amounts. But if you don't get that first step out of the market stall, then you will remain in serious poverty.